Rob disappear on me? I don't think. All right, now we're good. So I know today was the first day that we tried to use the breakout rooms beforehand. We had a little bit of challenges there as far as getting back in and out of breakout rooms. So that's something we'll continue to experiment with. I don't know how many people joined one of those breakout rooms, but I know I jumped into one and had some good conversation with fellow Rotarians, which is what we want to do and what we want to continue to do. So as you do come into the meetings, if you get here early, we'll continue to use those breakout rooms as we go forward. So please play around with them and join a breakout room and have good conversation with your fellow Rotarians. So that being said, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the noon meeting of the Rotary Club of La Crosse. My name is Andrew Bockham, and I have the honor of being your club president this year. Starting out this week, we have guests and visiting Rotarians. If you are a guest or a visiting Rotarian, I would ask that you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself. And I know Pat Ruda has a guest.
We'll see if Arlette is here. Arlette, are you on the call? Not yet. Okay. We'll have to put a hold on that for now.
Okay. Well, and I see Tony Cooper is joining us again. Tony, good to see you again.
Wanted to thank everyone, especially Andy, for making it possible for me to join the meeting. I really enjoyed today's conversation group that I was part of. I learned how to get it, where we might be able to find out when vaccinations are going to be available. And I learned some things about the mayoral race or the change in mayors that I never thought I would have learned otherwise. And I'm also learning how we can, my Toastmaster Club can improve in terms of the way it does outreach to people in the community. But I'm overjoyed for the chance to be here today.
Thanks, Tony. Good to see you. Any other guests or visiting Rotarians?
I see Duncan Cameron is visiting. Hello, Duncan.
Hi, Duncan. You want to say hello? Maybe not. Okay. Well, welcome everyone who is joining us today. Thank you for joining us. We're so happy to have you with us here today. Moving ahead, condolences and hospitalizations. Our thoughts are with Tammy Woods and her family. Her mother, Kathy Faschingbauer, passed away on January 6th. And this week, her obituary was in our newsletter. So we continue to think of them in this challenging times and keep them in our thoughts. Get well wishes go out to Erlemay Dalby. Erlemay suffered a stroke a couple of weeks ago, and it sounds like everything's going well, and she's starting her therapy sessions here soon. So our support is with Erlemay as she works through this. Our thoughts continue to be with Rotarians Diana Carey, Tim Ayler, Pat Smith, and Bud Hammis's wife, Barb, as they are dealing with health issues. So moving on, celebrations this week. Happy birthday goes out to Cindy Erickson. Honorary member, Jerry Ostring, Greg Reichert, Bob Daly, and Mary Stanek. Happy anniversaries this week go out to Tai and Kayang Vu. Happy club anniversaries this week go out to Lisa Duncanson, Peter Krause, honorary member, Brian Reitzel, honorary member Mike Hardigan, Tara Johnson, Angela Sherwinski, Eileen Kernozik, Tim Kolick, Pat Ruda, Catherine Sexauer, an honorary member, Callie Smith, and Ian Turner. Moving forward, our Rotary Moment this week, and a reminder, these videos will be up on our website. So if you want to watch them again to see a friendly face, or just share them with a prospective Rotarian to give them a better idea of what Rotary is all about, you are welcome to do that. And this week, my Rotary Moment video comes from Thomas Barenbeck, And this is one that isn't shot in the summer. So I have nearly run out of my summer collection. So moving forward, these videos might show a little bit more of the winter beauty in our region, not the summertime beauty. So Rob, if you could roll the video. Hi, it's Andy. I am here. I'm actually standing in Winona County. You can see there's a post right there, and that puts me in Winona County, and I'm here actually with my good friend Tom Barenbeck. And Tom, he's standing all the way over in Houston County, and I found it kind of interesting. Tom's house is in 2 counties, which is kind of unique and interesting. So tell me about that, Tom. Why did you build a house in 2 counties?
I didn't want to. I didn't plan it to, and I tell you, you learn interesting things about, but I actually think there's a good side to it. So if Julia is mad at me, I can move into 1 county and she stays across the border and we'll be fine.
That's fantastic. Tom is involved with Mayo. He travels quite all over the world. So tell me, you're doing projects where right now?
We're doing projects in Indonesia and in China, mostly there, but our main work is in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. And you're working on building hospitals?
We're building hospitals, and we're advising on hospital systems and medical systems and how to teach and practice medicine.
Nice. And Tom, he's traveled all over the world, and tell me, what is one of the just coolest places you've ever been, Tom?
The coolest place is actually here. It was the Grand Canyon.
Oh, really?
I was absolutely amazed about it, and I really wanted it. Because you travel so much, I don't know much about America, but when we were able to go and see the Grand Canyon, it was overwhelming. It was marvelous. I'm going to go back there.
Wonderful. Good to know. So, Tom, you've been in Rotary for quite a few years. Tell me, what's a Rotary moment that really stands out to you?
Probably one of the Rotary moments that stands out is the friendship across borders. And one of the things that was actually fairly recent was the friendship exchange with Holland. And we gained 2 absolutely wonderful friends, Harm-Jan Timmins and Miep van Hees. And we have been staying in touch. And I think Rotary makes that easy and connects the world. And that's how it's got to be.
Nice. And my final question for you, Tom, what does Rotary mean to you?
It really is service above self, and I would say it's the unbelievable, especially here, the service to the community and beyond. I mean, it's been so much fun, and Julia and I have enjoyed, participating and trying to support the community. And it's a great way of getting into the community since we just moved here.
Great. Well, thank you for your time here today, Tom. Say goodbye again to all your Rotary friends.
Goodbye to all the friends, and 2021 is going to be a really good year. I feel it in the old bones.
Thank you, Tom. Right, and I want to thank Tom again for taking that time with me. One of the things that you don't know and don't see in the video is I was actually just in Tom's neighborhood. I was out, I saw Ed Newman just before I saw Tom, and just decided on a whim to pop in unannounced and rang Tom's doorbell, and what kind of weirdo does that? But I did. But Tom welcomed me, offered me coffee, and we probably talked for probably about 45 minutes, and it was really awesome just to spend that time with Tom. And Tom touched on that and what he said. He talked about the relationships that Rotary has fostered in his life. And I was just thinking about that, on how many levels that Rotary really impacts our life. And it happens on an international level. It happens on a local level. And in our club, I know we have all formed a lot of just amazing relationships in Rotary. And this is an example of where Rotary isn't just a club, but it's much more than that. It's a community, and a really amazing community at that. So thank you again, Tom, for sharing that time with me and being a friend and being part of my community. So moving ahead, membership this week. We have no new members to report this week and no resignations to report this week. So our membership stands at 187 active members. and 29 honorary members. Rotary announcements. I have a few announcements, and then there will be time for additional Rotary announcements when I am done. So please remember to unmute yourself and remember to state your name. For those who have not been here the last couple of weeks, we announced that our dear and wonderful Lynn has decided it's time to retire. We have formed a search committee to try and find a new club administrator, and we do have a job description that we can share with our membership to start the process of finding a new club administrator. It is out there on our Facebook page. It is also out there on our website, and I see Sarah just shared it in the chat. So if you know of anybody that would be interested, family, friends, anybody that would be interested, we would love to encourage them to apply as we look for a new administrator. So our Rotary DEI committee, who is going to be presenting today, is looking to start a book club, and we'll be sending out a survey of members to see who might be interested. This is a great opportunity to continue to grow and promote positive change in our community and our world, and also connect with other Rotarians. So look for that coming out. Actually, Sarah, it looks like just saved that or shared that on the chat. So mark your calendars for April 18th through the 24th, as that will be our district conference this year. It will be a virtual conference this year. I want to encourage everyone to take time to attend part of that virtual conference. It's really a great opportunity to open up your Rotary world by attending one of those district conferences. So this year, with it being virtual, it should be quite easy to do. I do also want to make a special note that in a couple of weeks here, we are going to have another very special speaker as part of our program. Ina Pinkney is a polio survivor and has spoken to our club before, but it should be just another tremendous meeting. So I want to encourage everyone to attend and invite a friend. It really promises to be a special meeting. So I know Dean Dickinson has an announcement.
Sure, I do. A couple of weeks ago, we presented a program on something that's evolved here in our area. In a collaboration with the St. Clair Health Mission, the area Rotary clubs are going to be purchasing a mobile medical clinic. It was a well thought out process. We had 8 really wonderful projects that were proposed, and this project has resonance because of the impact that it's going to have on a maximum number of people. There's a large population that cannot get into the St. Clair Health Mission, and so we're going to be going out to them. Our outreach will go as far, perhaps, as Arcadia, over into Monroe County, down into Vernon County. Well, we set a goal in the community of $80,000, and we divided it into 2 parts. A community goal of basically non-Rotarian members, and then also another goal made up of those of us who are members of Rotary. And so that it falls to us to raise $40,000 on the Rotary side of this. And the reason $80,000 is significant is because if we raise that, our district Rotary Foundation will match it. And then Rotary International will match our $80,000 again, which will allow us to raise about $240,000 for the purchase of this vehicle. Well, we launched it in our club 2 weeks ago. Some of the other clubs launched a little bit earlier, but January is the month when we're making this project available and known to all of the area clubs. Right now, 5 of our clubs, including our own, have done rather well. The Holman Rotary Club is at 142% of their goal. After Hours Club is at 150% of their goal. La Crescent is at 175% of their goal. The Valley View Rotary Club is at 185% of their goal. And the goals were established based on the population, the Rotary membership in our clubs. With about 500 members in our area, we broke down to about $80 per member. And so our club goal is $15,000. And in 2 weeks, we've raised $10,925. That's about 72% of our goal. Lynn has that enrollment form or the donation form available. If you prefer to just go around that, you could send a check directly to the Rotary Works Foundation. Just make sure you note on the check that it's for the mobile medical clinic. Our club goal is $15,000. And today, like I say, today we're at $10,925. And I really hope in the next couple of weeks, we can reach that goal, because I'm hoping that by the middle of February, we'll be in a position to perhaps place an order for that vehicle. So I want to thank everybody that's contributed so far. 26 of our members have contributed. There's room for more. So thank you very much.
Dean, can I add one thing?
Sure.
I just made my donation online, and I noticed that it's you have an option of, if you don't send in a check, you can pay through PayPal or through a credit card. If you do pay by credit card, there is a 3% fee, and you need to add that in manually. Some of the other things like GoFundMe will give you that option. It'll ask you if you want to do that, but this one doesn't. So make sure you add that on. I didn't, and I didn't realize it wasn't going to ask. So I just wanted to let everybody know if you want to add on another 3%.
Good. Well, thank
No matter
you,
how
Dan.
do it, if you go through PayPal or if you use a credit card, there will be a deduction, a service fee. And that's why I'm encouraging the use of a check. Those 2 and 3% add up rather quickly. So thank you very much for that reminder, Catherine.
And thank you, Dan, for that update. That is really encouraging. And it sounds like that project is really off and running well. So that's good. Any other Rotary related announcements? All right, hearing none, we will move forward with our program today. Our program today is the second edition in our diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation. And our last conversation started here in October and really fostered a lot of good growth from the club and a lot of good conversation within this club. And not only at the club level, but also on a personal level for a lot of people. So we are going to continue that today. And leading us again today is our fellow Rotarian, Lauren Junot. So Lauren, I will let you take it away.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here with everyone. Perfect. And before we get started, I just want to say that I think it's important that I acknowledge that yesterday was an incredibly historic day for women across our nation of every age, every race. Regardless of how you voted, we swore in our first female vice president, our first Black vice president, and our first Asian American vice president. And what a historic day for women across the United States. So I just felt like I needed to at least acknowledge that for all of us. So today I'm going to talk to you about our kind of second piece of what Rotary DEI is focusing on, and this is an education piece for everyone. As we start to really address issues of racism, sexism, ableism, and general overall acceptance within our club, and focusing on really making us an accepting and open, diverse club, it's important that we first do the personal work that it takes for each of us to get to the point where we're ready to do so as a club. And so the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about when it comes to really educating folks on areas of diversity, equity, inclusion is implicit bias. So first we need to talk about what is bias. Bias is defined as a disproportionate weight in favor of or against an idea or thing, usually in a way that's closed-minded, prejudicial, or unfair. It's also defined as something that can be innate or learned. People may develop biases for or against an individual, a group, or a certain belief. And in terms of science and engineering, a bias is a systematic error, which also in terms of our country, bias is a systemic error. We can't move forward in our country while systems of oppression are in place. And often those systems of oppression are in place because of internal personal biases that folks hold. And so we really need to start addressing those on an individual level in order to move forward as a whole. So there are two types of bias when it comes to especially talking about racial and social justice, and those are implicit bias and explicit bias. And it's really important that we understand the difference between those two things. Implicit bias is when we have attitudes toward people or associate stereotypes with people without our conscious knowledge. So this might be a bias that you were raised in a certain environment, or you saw things in the media while you were growing up, or you've heard people talk about this for years and years and years, and you've developed this unconscious bias about someone or a group of people or an idea that probably has no evidence backing to it. It's just a bias that you have developed that you may not even be aware of. So implicit bias is something that is not conscious knowledge of ours. Explicit bias is when individuals are very well aware of their prejudice and their attitudes towards certain groups or groups of people. And then when that is acted on, that's what we consider explicit bias. If you know for sure that you hold a bias against someone because of the color of their skin, because of their ability level, because of their gender, and you're acting on that anyway, and you're not doing anything to address it, that's what we consider explicit bias. I'm going to be focusing with you all on implicit bias today. So I don't have a lot of time to introduce this because we're going to have some activities later on, but I have asked our club to send this out to all of you as well. This is a really great resource from Deshaun Hockett. I am a TED Talk fanatic. I love TED Talks. I feel like they're just a really great snippet of information that's consumable, that's quick, that we can take in and learn a little bit from, and then educate ourselves more afterwards. And so Deshaun Hockett has a really great TED Talk around implicit bias and what can we do about it and how we have to address it. So I would encourage you to later on watch that when you have some time and start to dig yourself in a little bit more into what implicit bias looks like. But he does say in that TED Talk that the implicit biases we hold often conflict with our stated beliefs. And that's a really important thing to recognize about implicit bias, that you may outwardly and to the world express that you think racism is wrong, that you think sexism is wrong, that you think ageism is wrong. But you may also hold some implicit biases that you're unconscious of, that when your words come out or your actions come out or you interact with a certain person may contradict directly with those stated beliefs. And it doesn't mean that you're being insincere or that you're lying about what you're saying you believe. It means that you've got some internal work to do, and we all have that. When implicit bias manifests for us, that can look a lot of different ways, but when implicit bias manifests, it's an idea that's coming out of us that we're acting on or that we're speaking on that doesn't have any basis. And it really is a personal, internal issue on a personal level that we have to, in our own lives, address. Your implicit bias is not something that I can change within you. I can educate you on it. I can help you learn to recognize it, but I can't, I can't walk up to Andy and say, Andy, I noticed that you maybe hold some bias against this person. I'm going to fix it for you, right? That's internal work that Andy would have to do that I can't do for him. And that's the important part about implicit bias. And it really falls back to what I've said a couple of times in different presentations, that our intent is not as important as our impact. And when it comes to implicit bias, we really have to recognize that as well, that we may be well-intentioned individuals, and there are a lot of really well-intentioned people who will say things or act a certain way towards an individual or a group of people and not intend for it to come off as racist or sexist or xenophobic or however it comes off. That doesn't matter. The intention behind it doesn't matter when the impact is felt so strongly and negatively by another person. And so that's why it's so important that we do the individual work to recognize when those biases are coming out, recognize when we are even thinking them, and start to challenge those. To give you a couple of examples, I'm going to put myself in the spotlight a little bit and give you an example of an implicit bias that has manifested in me that I really had to work on when I went to college. So I was raised in a very white conservative town. I had 2 Black friends. They were twins. They came from the same family. And those were the only people of color that I was exposed to through the majority of my upbringing. When I got into high school, I was exposed a little bit more to a more diverse culture when I started working in a town nearby. But even then, I was still in a household and immersed within a friend group and a culture that wasn't accepting and open. And that really had a big impact on the biases that I held once I left my home and went to another city and went to college and started really being immersed in different cultures and expanding my friend group to be more diverse. And one of those biases that I had to recognize in myself is when I went to college, my university was still pretty white, but we had like 40% of the students attending were students of color. And so that was something that I hadn't experienced, and that percentage of a demographic that looked differently for me was something that I hadn't experienced a lot. And something that I noticed in myself was if I was walking on campus alone, and whether it was daylight or nighttime, I started noticing that when certain men would walk toward me, or if they were trying to approach to hold the door for me, or if they were just walking by, I'd start to like white knuckle on my bag a little bit more, right? I'd clutch my purse a little bit tighter or just become more like physically defensive. And I started to pay attention to when I did that. And what I recognized in myself is that I didn't do that when white men were approaching me, when white men were attempting to hold the door. I did it when men of color were walking past me or walking behind me or going to open a door. And that was something that I started to recognize in myself. And then I had to start challenging that and saying, why am I reacting in this way? The only men who'd ever affected me negatively in my life were white men. So why was I having this reaction to men of color when I hadn't had enough interactions with people of color in my life to even make an assumption like that or have a negative experience? And so I really had to challenge that bias that was kind of bred into me from media, from the environment that I grew up in. And so it wasn't an excuse for me to act like that. I had to start to recognize why I was responding in that way, to challenge myself to decide whether or not this reaction and this bias was rooted in fact and rooted in experience, or if it was an implicit bias that I was just raised with that I had to challenge and stop within myself. Another example of that is one that I touched on briefly earlier, and it's women in politics, right? Like just yesterday, we swore in the first female vice president. Up until that point, for the history of our nation, there has been, for a lot of Americans, this idea that a woman shouldn't be, and this is a statement that my grandfather told me, women should not serve as the president of the United States because they are too emotional and too hormonal. And we can't give them nuclear codes because they might get upset one day and just push the button, right? There's no basis for that. There's no factual information that supports that idea. That's just a bias that's held about women that isn't true, right? And we have evidence to support the fact that that's not true. Every war thus far in our country has been started by a man. So there's no evidence at all to support the fact that women aren't sound enough to serve in that position. And that's an implicit bias that folks just hold because of cultural influences that make them think that is the case. So those are just a couple of examples of how implicit bias might manifest in different folks and in different situations. So that's my whole introduction to implicit bias for you. And at this point, the DEI team really wanted to pause here and have everyone branch out and go do an implicit bias assessment if you've not done one, and then come back in to have some conversation. So before you get too anxious, I'm going to walk you through it. So you can either do this on your cell phone or you can do it on your computer. I know that Rob is going to put the link in the chat box so that you can have the link to go directly to the site. But this is a website through Harvard. Harvard has done a lot of work to put together unbiased implicit bias assessments to really help you analyze where you're at and to help you see some biases that you might hold. So when you click into this website, can you still see this screen with the new website up? Yeah, okay. So when you click in here, you're not gonna have to go through the email stuff. You're gonna go right here to Project Implicit Social Attitudes. You're gonna select your language choice, and then you're gonna go forward. This preliminary information is just telling you basically that you might encounter some results that you don't agree with. And that goes right back to our stated beliefs may contradict our implicit biases, and our implicit biases may contradict or conflict with our stated beliefs, and that's okay. This is a tool for you to be able to learn if you do hold some implicit biases, what those might be, start to recognize them so that you can start to challenge them moving forward. So you're just gonna click into I wish to proceed. And then it's going to give you this really long list of different implicit bias tests you can take. We're not going to take them all today. I just want you to pick one. And I'd like for you to focus on either race, sexuality, or gender. So pick something that is gender and career, transgender, sexuality, Asian, Native, race, skin tone, any of those. Feel free to pick those, and then you're going to take the assessment. So real quick, I'm going to just click into race here. All right, so this is going to ask you a couple of demographic questions. So you'll go through these like 3 or 4 demographic questions. And then what's going to pop up for you is if you're on a computer, you're going to use keys E and I. And the goal is that it's going to show you some pictures or some words, and you're going to try to relate those words. So the picture might be of someone that is obviously a white individual, and then the word is going to be white. So if you see the white individual, you know the word white is your I key, you're going to click it as quick as you can. So really this is like you're trying to just do kind of a gut instinctual reaction for how you classify each picture or each word. And if you get it wrong, you'll get an X, and then you'll just click the other button and move on. So this is going to be a series of 3 or 4 sessions of clicking right or wrong, black or white, male or female, gay or straight, whatever test you select, you'll go through there. And then at the very end of this, it's going to give you some information about where you might hold some biases. So if you prefer straight women over gay women, if you prefer white people over black people, it's going to give you some information based on your answers and how you clicked through the test. It's going to tell you what some implicit biases you might hold are so that you can start to address those. If you're on a phone, it's going to look a little bit differently. You're just going to have like a green button under yes or no, a green button under black or white. And so you can just like thumb click through these. So that is my introduction to what these implicit bias assessments look like. I think it's is it in the chat already, Rob? Okay, so go ahead, and if you feel comfortable going with it, click into that assessment. We'll see you back in about 10 minutes. If you have questions, feel free to unmute and we can help walk you through the process as well.